What are those subtle senses? The subtle senses are those which are there at the level of mind. We can see with the mind, we can eat with the mind, we can hear with the mind. So there are subtle senses and he has to control it. That is the purpose of yoga. So perfection of yoga is yoga only. The perfection of devotion is what? Devotion. What's the perfection of sadhana? To do more nice sadhana. And then reach the level of prema. And now 16th verse. Mana swabudhya malaya mana swabudhya malaya niyamya kshetragya etam ninayettamatmani atmanamanya balabhya dhiro labdhopashanti virameta krityat. Now, what should a yogi do? Manaha sabuddhya, by his own intelligence. Amalaya, unalloyed intelligence. Niyamyaha kshetragyaha. Niyamya. He should merge. Niyamyaha kshetragyaha. Now what is given? He has to regulate first. And kshetragyaha. Living entity is also kshetragya. There is another kshetragya who is super self. That is given Atmani. The two kshetragyas. We have studied in Bhagavad Gita. Not every soul is kshetragya. One who knows the constitutional position, that only person is kshetragya. He knows about the kshetra. Now, what he should do? Ninayeta tam Atmani. He is then merge the living entity into the super self. He is trying to merge. And by doing so, what happens? Dhiraha laptaha upashantihi. He attains full bliss. And then he gives up all activities. That means he is trying to merge into the super self. What's the meaning of merge into the super self? Trying to get the divinity. Trying to understand his divine nature. That is the real meaning of merging. But if a person doesn't understand what is merging, then what happens? He tries to remove his identity and then merges into Brahman and thus destroys his identity. So real meaning of merging the living entity into the super self is understanding our constitutional position. If this is there, wonderful. This is not there, then Am Brahmasmi Tattvamasi Sarvam Kalidam Brahman is misunderstood. Okay. Okay. Venkatesh Avatar Prabhu, please read. Venkatesh Prabhu. Okay, Raksha Mata. Okay, Raksha Mata ji read.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Shloka 16. Mana swabuddhaya malaya niyamya kshetragya etam ninayeta atmani atmanamatmana vayarudhya dhiro labdhopashanti virameta krutyat. Translation. Thereafter, the yogi should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity and then merge the living entity into the super self. And by doing this, the fully satisfied living entity becomes situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction so that he ceases from all other activities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai ho. The functions of the mind are thinking, feeling and willing. When the mind is materialistic or absorbed in material context, it acts for material advancement of knowledge. Destructively ending in discovery of nuclear weapons. But when the mind acts under the spiritual urge, it acts wonderfully for going back home, back to Godhead, for life in complete bliss and eternity. Therefore, the mind has to be manipulated by good and unalloyed intelligence. Perfect intelligence is to render service unto the Lord. One should be intelligent enough to understand that the living being is in all circumstances a servant of a circumstances. Every living being is serving the dictates or desire, anger, lust, illusion, insanity, and enviousness, all materially affected. But even while executing such dictations of different temperaments, he is perpetually unhappy. When one actually feels this and turns his intelligence to inquiring about it from the right source, he gets information of the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Instead of serving materially for the above mentioned different humors of the body, the living entity's intelligence then becomes free from the unhappy illusion of materialistic temperament. And thus, by unalloyed intelligence, the mind is brought into the service of the Lord. The Lord and his service are identical, being on the absolute plane. Therefore, the unalloyed intelligence and the mind are merged into the Lord, and thus the living entity does not remain a seer himself but becomes seen by the Lord transcendentally. When the living entity is directly seen by the Lord dictates to him to act accordingly to his desire. And when the living entity follows him perfectly, the living entity ceases to discharge any other duty for his illusory satisfaction. In his pure unalloyed state, the living being attains the stage of full bliss, labdopashanti, and sees all material hankering. Hare Krishna Mataji. Dhanwad Pranam.
Yes. So our Prabhupada says that merging into the spiritual rays, merging into our real identity. So the Jiva.
माताजी आप म्यूट है.
नहीं, mute हो?
नहीं, we can hear Raksha Mataji.
Yeah. So merging into the spiritual spark. That means what? Understanding our real identity. That has been very clearly stated. That is why pure intelligence, unalloyed intelligence has been given. How to understand this? Unalloyed intelligence has been given. So that is how one discharges his duty. When the living identity is directly seen by the Lord dictates to him to act accordingly to the desire. Living entity follows him perfectly. So he ceases other duties. And this is unalloyed state. The moment pure unalloyed state means you should understand. This is the stage of full bliss. Labdho pashani. Remember what is given? Labdho pashanti. And ceases all material hankerings. Okay, last verse. Nayatra kalo nimisham parah prabhu kuto nu deva jagatam na ishire nayatra sattvam narajasmashascha na vai vikaro na bhavan na mahan pradhanam nayatra kalo nimisham parah prabhu kuto nu deva jagatam cha ishire nayatra sattvam na rajastamascha na vai vikaro na mahan pradhanam. So what is the stage he has reached? Labdho shanti. At the time when he has reached this stage, now there is no destructive time for him. He is very much peaceful. Animishena. So there is no supremacy of devastating time. And then Paraha Prabhu, it controls even the celestial demigods that has been given. Prabhu, Paraha Prabhu, Na Deva, that is a demigods. Jagatam, ye Ishire. So in this way, there is actually no rules and regulations for him. Simple. And then Sattvam, because he is in the pure goodness. So these material rules and regulations has no value for him, or he is not bound. Na rajaha, there is no rajas, no tamas. And he is in pure goodness, sattvam. Vikaraha na mahan pradhanam. So in this way, there is no influence of any material goodness, material passion, material ignorance, nor even any false ego, nor any material causal ocean, and no influence of material nature. To whom? Who has reached this stage of Labdha Shanti. Why? Because of his unalloyed intelligence, he has merged into the super self. And then, in this way, he is a most satisfied person. What is the meaning of super self again? Divinity, understanding one's constitutional position. So when a person understands this, Sagunan samatite tan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Even Bhagavad Gita speaks about it. No gunas affect him. First thing. There is no supremacy of devastating time. That means there is no doshas. Kala dosha. Yeah, so many doshas. Gra dosha, this dosha, that dosha. No doshas affect him. These doshas, he controls the celestial demigods also. And they are given the responsibility of controlling the mundane creatures. So in this way, because he has that Labdha Shanti, he can control everything. Only a peaceful person has control over all the time influence. When you say time influence, actually it is Graha influence. Grahas, demigods also. Because that Anugraha is there, because he is transcendental person. He has crossed these three modes of material nature. He is completely dedicated for Krishna. When that person is completely dedicated for Krishna, time. No influence of any demigods. Now demigod, demigod will trouble a person who is dedicated to Krishna. They will not trouble. A person who is dedicated to Krishna, demigods, they stand with folded hands. That is why this is the only solution. Labdha Shanti. Attain that spiritual bliss. And that can be done only when a person raises the self to the super self. And what is the meaning of super self? Understanding our constitutional position. Simple. That I am at every circumstances servant of the servants of the servants of the servants of Lord. I cannot be direct servant of Lord. That is why Naham Vipro Nachanarapatir Napi Vaisho Nashudro Naham Varni Nachagrahapatir Na Vanasto Yatirva Kintu Prodyan Nikhila Paramananda Purna Mutapir Gopi Bhartur Padakamalayot Das Dasani Das. This should not be forgotten. 5 things which has been given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu should always be kept in the mind. A, B, C, D square. Association of devotees, book reading, chanting, deity worship, dhambas. This is done. Then even demigods stand with folded hands. No influence of time, no influence of the demigods, nothing. He crosses the 3 modes of material nature. Okay. Kankanga Prabhu, do you have English book?
Yes, Mataji, I have English PDF with me.
Yeah, read.
Thank you, Mataji. Na yatra kalo nimisham parah prabhu Kuto na deva jagatam ya ishvare na yatra sattvam na rajas tamascha na ve vikaro na mahan pradhanam. Translation
Pradhanam.
and
See what word is given? Navai vikaraha. There is no transformation. Which transformation? No material transformation. Na vikaraha. That is, there is no doshas. Vikaraha, no doshas. No material nature influence. That is also given. So that na has been given. Na devaha, jagatam. Though they are controller of the mundane creatures, they will not put any vikaraha, no influence. Okay, read.
translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. In that transcendental state of Labdho Pashanti, there is no supremacy of devastating time which controls even the celestial demigods who are empowered to rule over mundane creatures. And what to speak of the demigods themselves? Nor is there the mode of material goodness, nor passion, nor ignorance, nor even the false ego, nor the material casual ocean, nor the material nature. Purport. Devastating time, which controls even the celestial demigods by its manifestations of past, present, and future, does not act on the transcendental plane. The influence of the time is exhibited by the symptoms of birth, death, old age, disease, and these four principles of material conditions are present everywhere in any part of the material cosmos up to the planet Brahmaloka, where the duration of the life of the inhabitants appear to us to be fabulous. Insurmountable time even brings about the death of Brahma. So, what to speak of other demigods like Indra, Chandra, Surya, Vayu, and Varuna? The astronomical influence directed by the different demigods over mundane creatures is also conspicuous by its absence. In material existence, the living entities are afraid of stanic influence, but for a devotee on the transcendental plane, there is no such fear at all. The living entity change their material bodies in different shape and forms under the influence of the different modes of material nature. But in the transcendental state, the devotee is gunanatita, or above the material modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Thus, the false ego of I am the Lord of all I am survey does not arise there. In the material world, the false ego of the living entity trying to lord it over the material nature is something like the moth falling in a blazing fire. The moth is captivated by the glaring beauty of the fire, and when he comes to enjoy it, the blazing fire consumes him. In the transcendental state, the living being is pure in his consciousness, and as such, he has no false ego to lord it over the material nature. Rather, his pure consciousness directs him to surrender unto the Supreme Lord, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 7.919. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. All this indicates that in the transcendental state, there is neither material creation nor the casual ocean of material nature. The above mentioned state of affairs is factual on the transcendental plane, but is factual revealed in a transcendentalist knowledge of the advanced state of pure consciousness. Such transcendentalists are of two types, namely the impersonalist and the devotee. For the impersonalist, the ultimate goal or destination is the Brahma Jyoti of the spiritual sky. But for the devotee, the ultimate goal is the Vaikuntha planets. The devotee experience the above mentioned state of affairs by attainment of spiritual form of activity in the transcendental loving service to the Lord. But the impersonalist, because of his neglecting the association of the Lord, does not develop a spiritual body for spiritual activity, but remain a spiritual spark only, merged in the effulgent spiritual rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is the full-fledged form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, but the formless Brahmajyoti is simply eternity and knowledge. The Vaikuntha planets are also forms of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, and therefore the devotee of the Lord who are admitted into the abode of the Lord also get bodies of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. As such, there is no difference between one and another. The Lord's abode, name, fame, entourage, etc., are of the same transcendental quality, and how this transcendental quality differs from the material world is explained here within this verse. In the Bhagavad Gita, three principal subjects have been explained by the Lord Sri Krishna, namely as karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. But one can reach the Vaikuntha planets by the practice of bhakti yoga only. The other two are incompetent in helping one reach the Vaikuntha lokas, although they can, however, convincingly take one to the effulgent Brahmajyoti as described. Hare Krishna.
Yes. So, karma mishrit bhakta. Actually, it is bhakti mishrit karma, what has been spoken here. Bhakti mishrit yoga is also spoken. They are trying to take bhakti just to attain some perfection in yoga. That has been given. But very clearly it has been stated here, Param Shantim is only for that yogi who understands his real self. Before that, the verse was, he is trying to have suitable time and place. That means he is trying to choose, but he should not do that. That is actually Bhakti Mishrit Yoga people. Bhakti Mishrit Yoga. But when it comes to a real yogi, what he should do? Unalloyed devotional service. He should land up in that. So there it becomes Yoga Mishrit Bhakti. Yoga Mishrit Bhakti. For him, Bhakti is predominant. For him, what is the goal? Bhakti. Slowly, it progresses. Okay, stop here. Any doubts you can ask.
Mataji, may I?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Mataji, in the 14th verse, there's a reference to how a person who has impersonal conception of the Lord, how he is supposed to purify himself. Right, Mataji?
Yeah. This is for the one who are karmis.
Yes.
Karmis, prescribed duties. Yeah.
And they're advised to meditate on the Virata Rupa of the Lord. And while describing that, there's a reference in the purport, wherein he says a type of meditation on the absolute truth is advised. So, Mataji, in the very first verse, we had, like in the first canto, first verse, we were given the 6 features of the absolute truth. So they are all personal, Mataji. So how an impersonal person is being advised to follow that path?
He has been told first to meditate on the Virata Rupa. That means see the things around.
Yes.
Then slowly when he starts seeing the things around, by coming in, because he's now meditating on the things around and trying to purify his consciousness. And naturally there is an arrangement of he meeting the devotees and understanding because till he meets the devotees, he will never understand the personal form of Lord.
I'll just read that sentence, Mataji.
Yeah, read.
One is advised herewith to meditate upon the Virata Rupa specified in the previous chapters in order to understand how the different planets, seas, mountains, rivers, birds, like all this is given, and then all that we can conceive are but different parts and limbs of the Lord's Virata form. This sort of thinking is also a type of meditation on the absolute truth. So my question was, why, how can this be considered a type of meditation on the absolute truth?
One of the type, now, what is the problem? In seeing the birds, when you see the birds, you can see the art of Krishna. He will study that now. This is one of the type.
Okay,
Virat
that
Rupa
way.
is not non-different from Krishna. It is his creation only, na?
Yes.
It is his creation, appreciating him. His creation. Creator creation, how can you differentiate? Like sun rays, somebody is appreciating the sun rays. Is he not appreciating the sun?
Yes. Actually, I was trying to see through my own limited experience, because before this I had very impersonal notion of the Lord, and I loved his Virat form without knowing that we are supposed to meditate on that. But later on, as
People like to
get
take
little
Virat
into
form
this,
because it doesn't involve devotional service. So it is
yes.
very nice to just say, yes. The moment devotional service, all anxiety comes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, Mataji.
stop here.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Mataji. Mataji, Labdha Shanti is compared to Brahmabhuta Avastha?
Brahmabhuta Prasanna. Labdha
Okay.
Shanti. Okay,
Mataji.
stop.
मतलब जब भी बारिश का टाइम है तो जब भी बादल आते हैं ब्लैक तो मुझे अम्बु वाहन याद आ जाता है.
Very nice.
भगवान का है. हर रोज बोलती अम्बु वाहन आए तो इतना अच्छा लगता है.
Okay, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha कृपा सिंधुभ्यः च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमः.
Namo Namah.
वैष्णव वृंद की जय, श्री प्रभुपाद की जय.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.